is all this morning from the technical side, Rasmus.
Excellent. Thank you, Antonio. And I can see now Moldova has joined us. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening. And for those of you in Argentina, good night. We have the second to last of our webinars on things that are important to us happening right now. We have a speaker or a presenter, Jordi Sellas y Ferrés, that I have known for maybe 10 years or so, since, well, maybe 2012, I think was when we started the ECIA. At that point, Jordi Sellas y Ferrés, Jordi was the general director of the Catalan Institute for Cultural Companies. So he was a politically appointed head of that institute. You can tell more about that, Jordi. And you came from an unusual background. You were not the common politician, and you had a lot of experience actually from the creative industries, from publishing, and from making the biggest cultural club in Europe. I remember you also did some controversial stuff while you were at besides taking the motorcycle or the scooter every day to work, you also were able to have all the telecommunications companies, if I remember correctly, pay a part of their revenue to a fund that would support the cultural content, the content that actually would travel on those. If that's correct, you can always elaborate on that. Then you left the Institute for Cultural Companies, and I met you in May last year, where you were running these hyper-commercial, really successful entities that I think we should tell a bit more about. And now you have these fantastic entities are very much hurt by the Corona crisis because they're very audience-focused and live events, you could say. So you have had these four different careers, so to speak, or challenges during your career. But Jordi, welcome, and thank you for taking time to speak to us about your view on commercialization and innovation in the cultural sector.
Yeah, thank you, Rasmus, and Creative Business Network, and everyone involved for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here, although it's a holiday today in Catalonia. So everyone is like going to sleep now because it's been like a long party night celebrating St. John's night, like midsummer night. So in Barcelona, we celebrate that night with a lot of fireworks sounding all around the city during the whole night. So you can be at 3 o'clock in the morning hearing fireworks again. So everyone is returning at home. So when I was coming to the office, it was a really nice, picture, seeing me like fresh, going to start the webinar, and everyone like going back home, which are good news, because this means that things are starting to move on after this long lockdown that we've been living. And I think that we'll have time to talk about this in some minutes. So how from the creative and cultural sector, we can approach all the changes that are coming for the next months and maybe the next years after the COVID-19 crisis.
When you say you're in your office, what is that? Is that, I know that you're partner and CEO of at least 3 different companies. So yeah. Which one of it are you
at? Most of them are linked. So so we have the office at, every company has this, his own particular objective, but most of them are linked in a district in Barcelona called Poblenou, a very traditional old district in Barcelona, where the industrial revolution started here in the Iberic Peninsula. So it's a district really interesting because a lot of new things started here in the 19th century, also in the 20th century, and now it's being also transformed into a creative and cultural district called 22 at, which links, creative technology and art, also with a very traditional old neighborhood that's, just next to us. So I'm just 5 minutes walking from the beach, of Barcelona.
And you're in Ideal then, in that space?
Yes. Ideal, I will talk you a little bit more if you want in a few minutes. Ideal, it's a clear example of how we can transform all buildings, like all cinemas or all places that are being closed for a long time, and we can transform them in new, very powerful cultural proposals that can renew not just the building or the surroundings, but the whole neighborhood or the whole artistic environment of the city.
So now that you told us about it, what is Ideal? It's a multimedia center, or?
Yeah, Ideal is a digital art center. This digital art center, it was designed like a couple of years ago, and we were looking for, we had the idea and we needed the place. Yes, so we were looking for the place, and then we found it was always there, but you maybe pass by every day and you never think that is the place. So we thought, okay, this is a perfect building, an old cinema, one of the oldest cinemas in Barcelona. It was built in 1917. In 1917, the cinema, 17. So it was like the Russian Revolution, and the cinema was built. So that was the time, in the middle of the First World War. So it had 2,000 seats at that time. Imagine that, it's a huge building. So it's been a cinema for a lot of years, a lot of decades, until it was closed in the 80s. The first video club crisis for the cinemas, where in the 80s the video cassette arrived at home, so everyone started watching movies at home, and there was a big crisis in the 80s. So it was closed, and then it was transformed in a TV studio. So it was one of the biggest TV studios in Barcelona and in the country for like 20 years, more or less, a little bit more, like 30 years, more or less. And after that, it was closed because there are new kind of studios, more technologically prepared. So the building was closed for 5 years, more or less, closed, nothing to do there. So we thought, okay, what we want to do with this digital art center is to have a place to show all the new audiovisual immersive technologies, immersive projections, virtual reality, augmented reality, what now it's called XR. No, it's like all the new immersive kind of stuff. So we want to show that. So it will be open to the public. So it will be a place that can create a link between the audience and these new audiovisual technologies. But we also want to produce. So
you had a commercial business plan behind?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I can tell, if you want, I can tell you exactly how we got there, because it's like, it's a very particular case of how you can transform a business together with the innovation that you want to do. So that you can start with an idea, and that idea, maybe it's not the right idea to create a business model, but if the idea is strong, maybe you can find a business model that can work with that. Yeah. So in the end, just to finish about Ideal, now Ideal is this digital art center. We opened this art center in last November, and we are an audiovisual place. So people come to see audiovisual. So it's the same thing that place was doing in the beginning of the 20th century. So people were coming to see black and white without sound movies. So we're doing more or less the same, but in the 21st century with the new audiovisual technology, and we are also producers. So we produce the content. So we're doing more or less the same thing that the building has been doing for the last century, showing audiovisual and producing audiovisual. That's why we kept the name. Ideal was the name that the cinema had in the beginning. So we decided to keep the name because this was a very well-known building in the neighborhood. So we kept the name, and so now it's working.
If you also produce what is shown, do you consider yourself an artist then? Yeah,
more than an artist, I always say that I am a producer. Yeah. So and there are different. Every producer and every cultural business manager needs to have artistic knowledge on how to work, on how to connect dots that maybe are not connected, and how to transform these artistic proposals in something that can really connect with the audience and the things that I'm working now. So
you had 4 months. You had 4 months of audience, and then you had to close it down.
Yeah, that's it. But when we opened, imagine that this was a place in a neighborhood nobody remembered on this street. You know, it's not a cultural venue that it's you know, positioned in the mindset of anyone in the country. So we needed to do two things. We needed to explain this new kind of venue, and we needed to position the artistic proposal that we were doing. And it's been, I mean, it's not me who has to say it, but it's been pretty successful. We had 100,000 visitors during the first 4 months, paying visitors, because this is a private business. So, I mean, everyone, we have an average ticket of around 13 euros. So the most expensive ticket.
30?
No, 13, yeah? Okay. 13, yeah? So, our most expensive ticket is 16.50, 16 and a half, and our cheapest ticket is 9 euros. So depending on the day, depending on the age. So we have an average of 13, and we did, you can make the numbers, it's really easy. So, so we did these numbers in just 4 months. So this means that this was an opportunity space that we had, and that we did the business well. But thinking on innovation and how to innovate and create business models in the cultural and arts space, we started this company, this small company called Layers of Reality in 2017, thinking on creating audiovisual production company for immersive content. So we were expecting to have, we had this, let's say, this first, you know, the first VR glasses with the mobile phone locked in. So this is just 4 years old. So, and this looks really old today when you see the new VR glasses and everything. But this was pretty new in 2016. So we start thinking on how we can produce audiovisual content for virtual reality, for augmented reality, for who? Because no one at home has this kind of, no one. I mean,
exactly.
I don't
know anyone who has that.
Yeah. So, and the people who has this kind of stuff at home is people mostly related to gaming, you know, area. So they have it because they have the PlayStation or they have the PC and they have the glasses to play video games. So we said, okay, this is a really interesting thing. We truly believe that during this decade that we are, the 20s, we will be doing this transition between the rectangular screen to the world screen, you know. So everything around us would be, you know, suitable to become a screen. So we want to produce content. So what we did, we created, like, you know, thinking in the traditional way, we created a production company. And we said, okay, let's go to find our clients. So who can be our clients? So our clients can be museums or cultural entities, you know, or broadcasters, this kind of people who are buying cultural and audiovisual content. So what
kind of content, just an idea of what kind of content you have produced? Is it, you know, is there a narrative? Is it a movie? Is it something that's more like a presentation of an artist, or what kind of examples?
Yeah, for example, during the first year, we produced for National Geographic, I don't know if you know this series in National Geographic called Megastructures, which is a series that explains how you can build, you know, big stuff, big buildings or big bridges. So National Geographic, in this Megastructure series, they did a chapter explaining how Sagrada Familia temple is being built in Barcelona. You know, this is a temple that's being built for more than 100 years. So, and they are finishing the temple for 2026. So they are running a lot. So they have a lot of engineers working there. So we shot these incredible immersive images on the top of the towers when they are putting all the pieces together and building the temple or going inside. And this was like an extra content for the traditional broadcasting documentary. So you have the documentary, and together with the documentary, you have a small piece of content, immersive content that you can experience with VR glasses or with 360 video in YouTube. This is the kind of content that we were, thinking on produce.
And the advantage is that the viewer understands the structures better, that it's becoming more alive, or?
Yeah, I mean, when you start experimenting in immersive video, you realize that once we have the correct the correct stuff, not this kind of stuff, so more easy to put, more ergonomic, more cheap, more easy to use. So when these glasses would be more similar than to these glasses, and this will happen during the next years, this kind of content will be massive because the experience is completely different. It's just a matter of time and a matter of technology. So we were completely convinced that museums and other kind of entities would be, really interested in our stuff. For example, if you can go, a real example in Teatro La Scala in Milano. So Teatro La Scala produced a VR piece where the visitors to the museum, usually a lot of people goes to see La Scala just to see the building. They are not going to see the opera, maybe because they don't, want to go to see an opera, they don't have the money, they are not interested, I don't know. So people go to see the building. So Teatro La Scala produced an immersive piece that when you finish the museum, you can put your glasses on and experience how the theater is when it's full of people with an opera going on stage, and you also can see backstage and all that stuff. So
maybe you can smell the saffron risotto that you can get outside in the
this would be the next step. Yeah. So the thing is that was a pretty good idea, I think. So create a production company for immersive content. What happened? It was a complete failure, So we spent like a year and a half with our suitcase, going to see everyone, with our projects, with our glasses, with our very nice presentation deck. It was really cool. We were selling, future and all that stuff. What really happened, it's that, no one really thought that this was a good idea. Yeah. For their museums or their, their cultural spaces and their, so if you have a product that you think that is really good, but nobody's really, wanting to buy it, maybe that project is not as good as you think, because I always have kind of discussions like this with, theater or literature or other kind of companies. So say, this thing is really, really, really good. I say, okay, if you cannot sell that stuff to anyone, maybe it's not, as good as you think. Yeah. So we start thinking, maybe we're not on the right direction. Maybe immersive content, projections, this VR, AR, maybe it's not good stuff. So we needed to rethink. While we already had the company and we already had the first investment, we needed to rethink, and we said, okay, no, we truly still believe that the problem is, it's not the product that we're offering, it's that maybe we are going to the wrong client. Maybe we're not going to the right client. We're not going to the correct people that are, really wanting to buy what we do. So what we did, we changed completely our business approach. We changed completely our business plan, and we said, okay, we're going to create our own space. We're going to create our own museum where we can.
That's when you started looking for Ideal.
That is the time. So we said, okay, let's build our place. Let's start to demonstrate that this idea that we have can be really, worth investing in. So that's why we said we need a place. We need a big. It's 2,000 square meters, so we need a big place. We need to create, an environment that has a lot of digital and technical stuff, but also a real strong product that can be directed to mainstream audiences, because if you're not, you know, approaching to mainstream audiences.
But it must be a huge investment though, to begin with, right?
Yeah. For us, it was, we started with $1.5 million just up front, just to, you know, create the place. And then all the running, budget that you have once you open. You have a lot of people working, you have a lot of stuff going on. So it was like, you know, a lot of things happening at the same time. So getting the investments, so start moving on and doing the first production, because it's not just a matter of content also, it's a matter of marketing. Yeah. So you need to really explain why you have to spend 16.5 euros for a ticket to go to see, you know, an immersive experience. Yeah. So that's what we did last year. We launched, we launched on November, by the last week of October, November 19. Mm-hmm. And it's been a pretty nice success. So we're really happy on that. And also we are planning now to expand in other cities, first in Spain and then around. So we think that we have demonstrated that this can be a really, you know, good new kind of approach to what we call education and entertainment put together, you know, like this kind of edutainment kind of content.
Yeah. How does it link to your, I think your Nostromos Live, the performing arts part? Do you also use that? I know you had great success with putting on some performing arts also, and you were taking it to Madrid after Barcelona. And,
I started a lot of years ago. I started as I started working in the performing arts sector, and there is where I learned a lot of things that I've been using for the last 15 years. Which, in a nutshell, you can explain it like selling tickets. It's a very simple action, but absolutely complex on how to do it. Because in the end, you say, I'm a ticket seller. I always say, joking with my team, I say, in the end, we're doing digital, we're doing scenic arts, we're doing, a lot of it, but we're ticket sellers. Yeah. Because the ticket, if you're approaching as a private, actor, you need to know that the biggest part of your revenue has to come from ticketing. Then you can have a lot of other stuff that can complete, all your revenue, but tickets bought by people, but by the audience, has to be, the biggest part of your revenue. So you need to be clear on that. You need to sell a lot of tickets to move on. This is different if you work in a public institution. You work, I don't know, an opera theater, or you work in a national theater or a national auditorium or symphonic orchestra. This is different. But and I learned
questions for you regarding your time at the Catalan Institute, but we'll take them later, because that must have been tough.
But yeah. It was it was fun also. But so the thing is that when I approach theater, performing arts, like, or when I approach the immersive experience exhibitions, in the end, what we do together, the different teams, is to try to find the correct cultural and creative content or experience that can be interesting enough in terms of art to have the best artists that we can get working together with us, and in terms of audience appeal, to be able to become a real business and make it work, make that the investment can work, and make that people really buys the ticket. So in the end, when you tell, okay, you produce musicals. I love to produce musicals. We produced, last year we produced La Cage aux Folles. We produced The Little Shop of Horrors. We're still with those shows, going on. And
they were extremely successful as far as I know.
Yeah, it was really, with La Cage aux Folles last year in Barcelona, we did 180,000 tickets. So for a musical, it's pretty good. We were like 6 months in a row. So like the best selling show in the city. And we were doing pretty much the same in Madrid during this year. But, after March, everything stopped.
What was it? Did you use any of your experience technologies in producing these shows, or was it because these were great actors and a great storyline and just a great production?
Yeah. the artistic part, it's really, it's key in anything you do in our sector. So you need to have a really strong artistic team working together with you, and if you do, immersive experience based on art or based on science, or you need to have the best team there. Mm-hmm. And if you produce theater, you produce musicals, you need to have the best actors, the best musicians. So this is something that is, I don't know other sectors. So I don't know pharma sector, or I don't know, real estate sector. So I don't know how that works. But in cultural and art sector, everything starts with an artistic point of view. So if you don't have that, maybe you can have a very strong business plan that you can think that make everything possible, but that won't be possible if you don't have a real strong product. So, but in this, it would be a mistake, I think, to link, too much technology, for example, in performing arts, because performing arts in its essence is a kind of experience that's been going on for, 3,000 years. Like, the Greek theaters in Epidaurus, they were doing more or less the same that we're doing today here in Barcelona and in Madrid.
Good actors, so good artists, good actors, and good
story, good actors, good, good stage design, and then you can do a lot, you can add a lot of technology. Where the technology is really strong is on the other side, the dark side, the marketing and selling and promoting side. So, and this is key because this changed a lot our business. If I think 15 years ago when I started, or 16 years ago when I started, and now, advertising and all the loyalty programs that you can do with the audience and all the other stuff, all the promotional stuff that you can do has changed, that nobody recognizes, how that was like 15 years ago from now. So technology is key. In this, I call it dark side. No, because it's bad, but there's a side that nobody sees. It's like how you make, the formulas to reach the audience that you really want. Mm-hmm. The bright side, where you see on stage, or the proposal, or the the immersive proposal, or this is something that has to do with working with strong artistic teams and strong production teams.
Yeah. But by the way, if anyone from the audience is interested in asking some questions to Jordi, you're welcome to either raise your hand or write it in the chat, and then I'll call you out. You mentioned the word loyalty. I know that one of the last things you did before joining the Catalan Institute for Cultural Companies, ISEC, right? Is it called? You did the biggest cultural club in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the biggest cultural club in Europe?
Yeah, when I say the biggest cultural club in Europe, this means a private club that is participated by a lot of people who are paying a fee, a year fee, to be part of a group of people, of a community interested in culture and arts. It's not specifically, a loyalty program from a bookshop chain stores, or a loyalty program of the subscribers of an opera theater or a contemporary art museum or something. It's just being part of a community interested in culture as a whole. So we created this club when I was working in this theater company. We had a lot of different theaters around, a lot of different productions, a lot of years ago, and we reached to the conclusion that most of the audience that were buying theater tickets, they were also interested in music concerts, or they were also interested in buying books, or they were really interested. So the cultural audience, it can be, what we say, the heavy users of cultural audience can be really, dimensioned in a way that can allow you to have this critical mass of audience together somewhere, and you can transform this critical mass of audience in an activator of all the other things that you want to do. In a nutshell, everyone has the friend who knows a lot on theater, and you ask him or her, what is the next show that I have to go? Because I don't know much about theater. You ask your friend. Everyone has the friend who knows a lot of literature and books. So you ask him or her, what kind of books do I have to read? Or you have your friend on music. So we wanted to have these heavy users together in a club to create, you know, a community so strong that can push forward the cultural consumption around the country. Yeah. So we created this club. You pay 40, 50 euros per year. You have your card. And with this card, you are allowed to have discounts or advantages, go to the previews where no one can go, a lot of different, very interesting stuff. If you're a heavy user, you can get that by paying that amount every year. So you're part of that club, you receive this newsletter. Imagine, we did it in 2005. So Facebook didn't exist. Twitter didn't exist, Instagram didn't exist, I don't know, TikTok didn't exist, you know? So, I mean, it was like, in 2005, there were not social media around. So we created a community with its, you know, newsletters and websites.
And it's still existing, right?
Yeah, this club, one of the things that makes me more happy is that I left the club in 2008, and the club, you know, now we're in 2020, it's still really, it's still, you know, the biggest private cultural club in Europe. It's called 3C, it's called Catalan Cultural Club. Yeah, so it's like 3C. You can visit the webpage, and I mean, still works, and people are happy with that. And it's still, you know, an entity, a private entity that's pushing forward all kind of cultural events in our territory. So when now I need to promote the shows that we do at Ideal or wherever, I use the club also to do it. I use their ticketing system and I use how they promote, because they are really, you know, they work, and I don't have any more, you know, vinculation with them than I was the founder of that 15 years ago, but I work for another company. So, I mean, I don't have anything on that. I use them because they are really useful. Not just for me, for contemporary art museums, for, I don't know, editorial publishing houses, for theaters, for music concerts and festivals, for everyone.
But you also say that it's heavy users. I know that many museums and cultural institutions have a problem with getting new audiences. You know, that the young boys that want to play football instead. And I see that we have actually a question from someone, but maybe you want to answer my question first. Or no, we go Jens first.
I keep this question because for me it's really interesting. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask Jordi. I mean, have you done a profiling of your audience?
Yeah.
Who's coming? And second, have you got special outreach to those in your city who normally would not consume cultural activities such as the ones? And have you any kind of strategic plan of how to reach these groups, whether they are, as Rasmus says, youth, young people, or
the connection is not so good for some reason.
Schools, kids, how you reach. Sorry?
The connection was wobbly, but
yeah, but I understand the question. Yeah,
okay.
It's more or less it's more or less the question.
Also, but I mean, how you reach audiences who would normally not go to a theater or not go to a concert, and how do you reach them?
Yeah, I have a very clear, I want to say, clear strategy on that after these years of experience. And my feeling is that we always say, and we dedicate a lot of time and a lot of, you know, conferences and webinar on topics like, you know, how to take young audiences to music concerts, classical music concerts, or museums, or all that stuff, or theater, all that stuff. So, and this was something that when I started working professionally in the art sector, like 2004, I was really worried about how to connect with them. And the reality is that now I have a perspective of 15, 16 years. Those young people that were not going to the theater in 2004, now they have become 30-year-old people that are going to the theater now. you know. So, I mean, there is something that we're really worried on, like young people are not doing the things that we expect them to do and they are doing other things. But there's another clear, strong reality that pushes these audiences, and there is some kind of things that at some specific ages are not interesting and starting to become interesting at some specific age period. So, and I have a 15 years perspective to see that this is a reality. So it's funny to see how 20-year-old people that were not going to the theater 10 years ago, now they are going to theater shows when they have 30. And when they have kids, they stop going to the theater and they go back again when the kids are a little bit older. So this is a life cycle that surprisingly keeps theater moving on, like performing arts or classical music arts moving on.
Wasn't that also part of your
just one?
Yeah, go ahead, Jens.
No, just as a final follow-up on that. Have you ever done any sounding out or polling of when people left your shows and things like that? What did they think? Did they get what they expected? Because this is, of course, the basis for them coming back and buying tickets tomorrow. Have you done this kind of systematic ones,
like an exit poll
testing of what the audience think about the product?
Absolutely, all the time. This is something that I call, you know, professionalization of art sector. I mean, knowing that the environment is what it is and the audience landscape that we have is what it is, we need to understand the audiences. We need to understand if they are getting what they expect or not, and why they are coming to us, on why they are not going. We need also to try to anticipate in the future what kind of new shows we need to produce, what kind of new contents we need to produce to guide our decisions. Of course, there's something that nobody will tell you, which is, Jordi, you need to open a new digital art center in Barcelona. Because nobody would say that, because nobody knew what this kind of art center was. So I wouldn't expect it to do, you know, a kind of study around and do, and after this, you know, test and focus groups and all that stuff, trying to say, okay, people are expecting that we're doing this kind of, you know, cultural proposal. But you can detect trends. You can detect what kind of things are happening and what kind of contents are moving and what kinds of contents are interesting. So testing, doing surveys, doing focus groups, working professionally with the audience is key, not just for private sector, which is absolutely key, because if not, you need to close. It's absolutely key. I think more key for the public sector and the public institutions, because they have a bigger responsibility than the private producers. Because the private producers, we need to create stuff that can be interesting, appealing to the people, and gives us the opportunity to move forward with other projects, with our companies, with our, you know, staff, with all the people that we're working. On the other hand, public entities, public institutions, they have wider responsibility on how to reach, you know, audiences that maybe are not, you know, now on the focus of cultural institutions or all that stuff. So these are two different kinds of.
Maybe that should be the lead into your time at the Catalan Institute for Cultural Companies, because I believe it was also the Catalan Institute for Cultural Institutions.
Yeah.
It's also about helping the cultural sector, commercialization and innovation, as well as the commercial part of the cultural sector, so to speak. You know, it's difficult to say where one starts and the other one ends, because sometimes a public entity will be part of a value chain that eventually is taken over by the commercial companies in the value chain. But how many years were you at the Institute?
I was there for 4 years. It was like a whole, almost 4 years. It was like a whole legislative period.
Yeah, from one election to another.
Yeah, from one election to another. This started in the elections of 2012 and finished in 2016. You know that from then in Catalonia we have a really moved period in terms of politics and everything.
Yeah.
So my period was not as moved as the last 4 years. Yeah. in terms of whole, politics of not just the government, but the whole region. So I had the opportunity to have like a whole legislative period to work together in plans that started in the day one and finished, the last day. And this was a great opportunity, and I'm really happy to have the experience of working in the public sector. I think that everyone can, or everyone, I don't want to say must, but I can say must have the opportunity during, the professional lifetime to see the other part, to see how the public institutions, to see how the public sector works, just to try to help, to improve, and also to learn, because from the other side, from the private sector, you always see, they are not doing this right, they are not doing this well, they are not doing that. And once you are on the other side, you start realizing that things are a little bit more complicated. So
we more often hear from the other side that people that work in the public sector, they should try and get a private sector. So this is an interesting point of view.
Yeah, I think that just for a short, I don't think that being in the public sector for a long period it's also good, because you start thinking in a way that reality is not exactly like that. So after a few years of working there, you start seeing big figures. For example, the budget that I had at the Directorate General that I managed at the Ministry of Culture of Catalonia, I had the budget around 140 million euros per year. Yeah. So 140 million per year is quite a big amount of money. Yeah. So
it's taxpayers' money.
So when you and when you are in the private sector, you know how hard it is to start having revenue. Not 1 million, just 1,000 euros. To create 1,000 euros of revenue, it's hard. 100,000 euros is hard. To create 1 million is really hard. To create 10 million is really hard. So imagine that you have 140 millions on the table at the beginning of the year, and you have to manage that. The perspective is completely different. So you don't have to think on how to create the money. You need to think on how to manage that money properly. And this is quite, exciting, quite appealing. But once you've been there for too many years, my feeling is that you start losing the perspective on how difficult get the money is and manage the money is. And I'm talking on my experience. So after 4 years, I start thinking, wow, I mean, figures are not exactly the same that I was used to, because I start looking at the projects in a way which is interesting, but it's not the reality that you find with your industry. That's why my feeling is that everyone should, spend some time at the public sector trying to help, and then go back, to the private sector and, return to create opportunities, jobs. And
what were the tasks? It was about commercialization and innovation in the cultural sector broadly, right?
Yeah, there were two main issues. One was the public approach. So I was managing all the public cultural networks of Catalonia. So theaters, auditoriums, and, all the art center and all that. So public approach, just, public institutions. And on the other hand, the Catalan Institute for Cultural Companies, it was just focusing improving the being more efficient and being more resilient to all the cultural and creative companies. Yeah. When we say on cultural and creative companies, and we're talking on about Catalonia, but happens more or less the same, because we have the experience in the European Creative Industries Alliance. Happens more or less the same everywhere. Most of them are SMEs, and the SMEs are more S than M. Yeah, so small and medium enterprises. So they are more small than medium, and this is the reality that we have. So a lot of cultural entrepreneurs are, just one person or two people working together creating a project. So we needed to try to approach that this is the reality, and if we wanted to foster, to push forward this reality and to make them more able to create
You wanted them
movies.
to scale, basically.
Yeah, to scale, but not just in terms of volume, just in terms of opportunities. Yeah, because sometimes it's not just being a 100 people company that it's something good. Maybe you can create a very nice company, really, you know, well and happy and working company with 3 people, you know. It's not about being big, it's about having big opportunities. It's about being connected. So that's why all the European projects were working really well, and all the new opportunities that we created due to the biggest funding that we had, it was really interesting. Of course, when I say I had 140 million budget, it looks like a lot, but when you look at the amount of things that you have to do, it's not a lot of money. So we needed also to design new ways to create money. And that's why we designed what you were saying in the beginning. We created a tax, so which is something always really, you can create a tax? Yeah, we created a tax in 2015, a tax to the telecommunication companies to finance the audiovisual sector. Yeah, so, and we created that tax also to help specifically a sector that if wants to compete, for example, if you want to do movies or you want to do series or you want to do audiovisual content, you need to have a lot of money together with you. You need to have, you know, a lot of investment together to compete with other productions to other countries that have, I don't know, tax rebate, tax shelters, have another kind of stuff that we don't have. So we needed to create this kind of thing. So my experience there was both on public networks, and on the other hand, companies, mostly small and medium companies, small and medium enterprises, helping to improve, to be, you know, less depending on the public sector. So being more professional and depending less on the public subsidies by creating bigger opportunities.
But there must also have been some effort to the public part that you talk about, to make them more efficient or more innovative. And maybe here now we have about 9 minutes left. And again, the audience, you're welcome to ask questions, raise your hand.
It's been really fast. It happened really fast.
Yeah. But have you, I suppose you also had some efforts on having the public sector, the cultural public sector innovate. But also now, I actually spoke to the guy at the Danish Ministry of Culture yesterday who was responsible for all the museums and having them become more innovative and finding new revenue streams. Have you seen that happen in Catalonia?
Yeah. Are you asking for revenue streams in the public sector specifically?
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen that they're going new ways to reach new audiences? Digitization is an obvious one.
Yeah.
On Zoom.
Like on the audience topic, which I think that due to the experience, I can have a clear idea of what I think. It's not the truth, it's not what it is, it's what I think in terms of audience. So I think that, you know, audience keep evolving, and if you do the right things at the right time, audience will be there always. If you have to work hard and you have to do it, but audience will be there. In terms of revenue streams, I also have a very, you know, is my position, yeah, but it's a strong position in how to approach that. And I think that when we start making that the public institutions are transforming themselves in kind of companies that need to improve revenues and create revenue streams, trying to finance better themselves, in the kind of cultural politics that we have now, it will never work. Never. Why? Because all these institutions, they know that in the end, they will have the budget to cover the things that they will need. Because the approach that we have now, I'm just talking on the European kind of cultural politics vision, in the end, they will have the budget to keep working. Maybe they will do less exhibitions, maybe they will do less shows if the budget is not going, you know, enough, but the institution will still be there. This is the big difference with a private company. I told my team when we started at Ideal in November, I told them, okay, guys, we're so happy here. We have a very nice venue. We have an amazing marketing plan, we have an amazing content, but if we're not selling tickets, by Christmas, we are closed. This is something that doesn't happen in the public sector, but I don't think that this is wrong. I think that this is right. So private institutions are private institutions and public institutions are public institutions, and we have to ask them different things. If we make them compete, we need to be sure that public institutions, they need to have the funding they need. And they have to be effective on the objectives that we ask them. If we ask to a National Art Museum a specific kind of objectives, and they every year keep, you know, doing well in the objectives that we're asking them, they need to be funded properly for what they have to do. If we start then start thinking on, no, they need to think on how to reach better the audience, how to get better to the public.
We can easily see we risk seeing some unhealthy competition here also.
And it doesn't make sense, because in the end, it's not a competition, because they will always have the funding in the end to keep having the house working and the, you know, the team working.
I remember the Danish theaters were complaining that the Danish Royal Theatre, which is 100% public funded, put on My Fair Lady. Yeah. And they said, why did they use taxpayers' money for My Fair Lady when they could have put on some Wagner opera instead?
This is a really interesting discussion. And what I think is that public institutions, they have a really strong and necessary position on the society. They need to do a big work. They have a big job to do. And we have to be very, you know, respectful, but also demanding on how they are accomplishing the objectives, but not creating new revenue streams. This doesn't make sense.
We also have a question again from Jens.
Yeah, sorry. Jordi, no, I just wanted to go back on the thing you raised about being in public service all your life, because I did it. But we had a policy in the European Commission of wanting to have people moving out of the Commission into the private sector, including the cultural sector, and from people in the cultural or the private sector to move into the European Commission. Have you, in your institutions and in your organizations, reached out to publicly employed people in Catalonia and offered them a contract of 2 or 3 years to come out and learn on the ground the situation you're describing for us? In other words, have you tried to break that barrier?
Yeah, this is something that maybe when I was talking about public and private sector and professionals, I didn't explain it enough. One thing for me are public servants, you know, people that are, you know, dedicating their lives. So they have a lifetime career working for the public sector because they are the professionals that are always there, you know, and this is absolutely key to keep the institutions moving on, because every election takes new politicians up there or new technical, you know, directors up there, which are appointed for the politics side of the politics side. So they have new ideas, new things, new ways to do things, but they need to have the base of public servants working there and keeping, you know, the institution strong. So I was referring to the top management staff, which for me, it's really key, that has, you know, this kind of renewal.
So was I. I mean, are you offering some of these to come and work with you so they will learn what it is to be in the private sector of culture?
Yeah.
Working there for a year or two?
No, and this doesn't happen, you know, and this is something that is both ways, you know, because when you go to the private sector, or when you come from the private sector and you go to the public sector and then you go back, you have a lot of restrictions on what kind of company you can work for, you know, a couple of years or 3 years. You have a very strong, you know, legislative restrictions that you cannot work for any company that you have, you know, given some kind of subsidies or some kind of money, which is clear, because if not, you can give money to a company and then you go work for them. But on the other hand, close you a lot, you know, the opportunities when you go out from the public sector. So this thing that you're saying is really interesting. It's not working both ways. And for
we have about 2 minutes left, or even less here of this 1 hour webinar. I am so happy that we're bringing you back, Jordi, next week.
Happy to be here.
And I'm also very happy that I didn't, that I took the decision not to include a lot of other speakers in this. Although it is a a subject. The whole cultural sector, innovation, commercialization is something that a lot of ministries of culture right now are scratching their heads and thinking about how can we, what can they do really practically in terms of getting audiences and getting revenue to many of these institutions. I don't think we really have time for any last questions here. So Jordi, I want to say thanks a lot for giving us your insight into both the private sector and the public sector in the culture and creative industries. And I knew you had a lot to tell. You also teach several places. Maybe you can tell where people should inscribe themselves if they want to hear you lecture.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching in both, just a couple of places, because it's just a small period of the year that I dedicate to lecture, because if not, I don't have enough time. So one is university.
What, 3 kids or 2 kids and a wife?
Yeah, two kids, small kids. So imagine my life. Yeah. So the thing is that I'm doing lectures here in Barcelona in a Master of Cultural Management here in the Ramon Llull University, and also at the master that they do in Accademia La Scala in Milano, of also Master of Cultural Management for institutions. So these are the 2 places that I go every year to try to explain the things that I know the best way I know.
Thank you very much, Jordi. You know a lot, and I'm happy that you could share some of your knowledge with us. And I'm also happy that you will be back, as I said. So, gracias.
Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. Now.